Hey everybody, my name is Chris Trier. Welcome to our May Microsoft updates. Through this episode, we're going to be covering off everything that Microsoft has been doing during the month of May, as well as the Microsoft Build event that's been going on in Seattle over the 21st to 23rd of May. So let's get into it. Okay, so first thing let's cover off Microsoft Build. This is one of Microsoft's annual events that they've been doing. This has been going over in the last week of May. It's basically all about how they're building apps and developing things and pushing things for the future. So there's been some quite decent announcements, a lot of them very heavily, as you might have guessed, around AI. So we talk about sort of the advancements in Copilots and all the different Copilots and some of the Azure updates that they're bringing out. So first and foremost, Copilot plus PCs. Microsoft have announced a raft of new Windows machines designed and aimed for having Copilot straight out of the box, aptly named Copilot plus PCs. These devices are claimed to be some of the most intelligent machines on the market, boasting better battery life and access to advanced AI models, enabling you to do things you may not be able to do with other types of machines. Some of the new features are going to include things called recall, which is shown on the video below. So this has been able to go back in a bit of a timeline of what you've been doing on the machine and flick back to whatever it was you were doing in said time frame. Maybe you're browsing a website and you forgot about it, or you're looking for a particular image that you've been searching for. Some nifty features that I'd like to see, where Microsoft really pushes this to, because I can see the benefits of it. Can also see some privacy concerns and things like that, depending on where that data goes. So stay tuned and let's see what Microsoft do with this product. They've introduced a new chip aiming to incorporate the power of the CPU and GPU. The neural processing unit, aptly named the NPU, is basically combining the CPU and GPU, connected and enhanced by a large language model running in the Azure cloud as well. So it's got a small language model, AI model built onto the machine, and it using the internet connects into the large language model in Azure, interrogating things using things like ChatGPT, the Azure language model, which means it can expand its AI capabilities. And these PCs can apparently achieve a level of performance not seen before. Like I say, let's wait and see on this space. Obviously, whoever's coming out with the new latest and greatest product is all going to say there's the biggest and the best. I can't wait to get my hands on one and see what it can really do. Okay, Copilot updates, another step in the right direction for Microsoft's AI evolution. There's been a raft of announcements. I'm just going to come out some of the key ones that we've sort of thought were quite useful for everybody. We've got Team Copilot, touted as a sort of AI co-worker who can drop into video calls, summarize meetings. If there's an agenda, ensure that's being kept to. We all know how often a Teams meeting can run off course. Another useful feature is going to allow people like latecomers to meetings catch up using meeting summaries, discover what's going on so far. So that'd be quite useful for many people, I imagine. Edge real-time video translations. This sounds really cool. So it's got the ability to dub and add translations of videos in real time, add captions to there that weren't originally there. Be great to see this, in the flesh when it comes to translating videos in real time and dubbing them. Sounds really interesting. Copilot agents, these are being touted as AI assistants that promise to independently and proactively orchestrate tasks for you. So looking at repetitive business processes, anything that means you need to, input data or do repeat steps to perform an action. Microsoft have used a couple of examples when they showcased it about employee onboarding, helping you go through the steps. So again, this may be a product that takes a bit of work, but I can really see the benefits inside your business. Microsoft also announced ChatGPT 4.0, now available on Microsoft's Azure AI Studio. If anyone's sort of been keeping up to date with ChatGPT and Azure AI, the ChatGPT 4 is there for like image and video AI tools, so allowing you to create imagery based on descriptions or edit videos based on descriptions. So there's been no word on the voice mode yet, but apparently it is due to come in the future. Azure Compute Updates, Microsoft have announced a load more updates to do with Azure hosting infrastructure. They're now supporting AMD's Versation MI300X AI accelerator chip, so this will be coming to VMs very shortly, which again, if you're running your own language models, doing your own AI testing, it'll be really useful depending on your use case. Azure Compute Fleet is now in public preview, so this gives you the ability to basically look after infrastructure on mass compute capacity. So you're talking up to 10,000 VMs in a fleet, multiple sets of resources, capabilities, different scaling settings, all housed within a single fleet for management. So quite exciting if you're in that sort of space. One big announcement they made was Azure Cobalt. This is a CPU that boasts 96 virtual CPUs. It's an ARM-based virtual processor called Azure Cobalt. I believe this is out in preview now as well, so if you've got the use case for a VM of that size, be interesting to see if you can take a look at it. Obviously, Microsoft Build, there's a load of other announcements. We're just going to cover off the ones that we thought were pretty key, and that's pretty much that for that. And then we're going to move on to other news. Microsoft Places is a new app Microsoft have been touting or reworking to provide you all-in-one solution to improve hybrid and in-person work collaboration. Think of it as a hub for various teams, departments, rooms, hot desking, that sort of scenario. So if you've got a sort of a shared office space or an office space where you have to book meeting desks, meeting rooms all the time, integrates with all your key Microsoft 365 apps, Outlook, Teams, etc. Help you to, also has features such as smart scheduling, workstation booking. So if you've got a raft of meetings, then Microsoft can make recommendations on meeting rooms. Say if you've got a meeting for 4 people that's going to be in a certain building, and it can see you've got 10 meeting rooms, 9 of them are booked. It's going to go, hey, this meeting room is available between X and Y. Do you want me to book it in for you? That kind of things. It's also coming as standard in your M365 Business Standard and Premium, your M365 E3, E5, and your M365 A3, A5. So that can be really useful in the education space as well. Microsoft Entra, Extrnal Auth is now in preview. So you've always been able to use other multi-factor authentication methods with Microsoft 365. So if you're using Okta or Duo or one of the other competitors out there, if you have that as your chosen IDP partner, each to their own on that. But it's never been able to satisfy conditional access. So if you're using certain conditional access policies, you'd have to make bypasses for that, which means from a security landscape, you can't leverage different layers of conditional access, such as maybe you can't apply MFA and device compliance, MFA and restricted locations via conditional access in Microsoft Entra. So Microsoft have now released in public preview the allowance of external authentication methods that are compatible with conditional access, essentially. Entra Group Writeback. Group administration is always a bit of a nightmare for Microsoft administrators, especially those with synced identities. Over time, right, it's only natural that groups expand, identities expand, you start leveraging things like cloud groups. The problem is you then get a number of groups that are synced on-prem, a number of groups that are cloud only. With Entra Group Writeback, you can now write back your groups that are cloud only back to your on-premise Active Directory, so it maintains that source of truth that should be how you should be implementing things if you have that hybrid scenario. Just word of caution, at the moment it only syncs your security groups. It doesn't do M365 groups or anything like that, and it'll only sync identities that naturally exist in your on-premise Active Directory. A very welcome change to merge formatting. Seems very simple, but if anyone spends a lot of time playing with documents, copying and pasting, you'll know every time you paste, it doesn't paste with merge formatting. A very simple update announced. The default option will now be paste with formatting. I know that's going to make my life a lot easier when I'm preparing documents, configuration documents, etc. Especially if you've got organizations that deal with a couple of different brands and you're trying to move stuff from one document to another and the branding goes all haywire. Next thing you know, you've got stuff everywhere. So a very, very welcome change. Android device staging. So Microsoft introduced a new enrollment method for the staging of corporate Android devices with Microsoft Intune. This works on a 2-stage process, very similar to how Autopilot out-the-box white glove works. So you can either your IT team or your vendor that you buy your Android devices from, they can basically pre-prep those devices by getting them out of the box, scanning like the QR code or whatever it may be, and getting a bunch of the configuration done on the device before it reaches the end user. So if you're got 50 Android handsets to distribute across your organization, sometimes if you've got it out of the box, your end user would then have to go through a number of steps and have a fairly chunky waiting time till they get that device sort of ready to use. This basically cuts that time in half or so by your vendor or IT team getting it to a point where it just needs the end user to enter the credentials, and then if there are any user specific requirements, then that's the point where they'll get installed. Nice and simple, very similar to how Autopilot white glove works. So if you buy, same with that, if you buy a load of laptops from a vendor, they could get them out of the box, get them to a point where it's just the user config and the device config's all there. So a very welcome addition for the Android admins out there. A couple of changes to Azure Backup. So a while ago, Microsoft released the enhanced backup policy for Microsoft Azure VMs. This allowed more granular backup technology, changing things like RPOs, retain restore points, that sort of things, leverage multi-disk cache consistency. What we can do now, if you were managing VMs that had backups before that announcement was made, and those came out and some after, you may have two different backup sets. You may have some running on the legacy sort of standard backup policy, and then some running on the enhanced backup policy. You can now support migration from your standard backup policy to enhanced backup policy, which is a welcome change, because it's always been a bit of a nightmare having to stop your backups, get rid of the backup vault that's associate it to your new backup vault, create new backup policy. So a welcome addition from Microsoft to get that migration policy in place. Microsoft have announced what is being dubbed Autopilot V2, so it's sort of a new generation of Windows Autopilot. It's only going to apply to Entra ID join devices. This will no longer be available for hybrid Entra ID join devices. So some of the key features to know: it's going to streamline device deployments, especially for admins. It's going to have a new profile configuration setup page. It's going to replace dynamic groups with enrollment time grouping. So the key differentiator here is dynamic groups could be quite slow to update. So if you uploaded a load of hardware IDs and you have a dynamic group based on hardware ID or a tag associated to it, dynamic groups only update every so often. It can be an hour, it can be a couple of hours, depending on what that refresh cycle is. The enrollment type grouping means that those group memberships are going to be more efficient, which means more efficient assignment of apps, policies, and scripts. You're going to get a lot more reporting on those devices. You're also going to get a redesigned out-of-box experience, which we've got a little screenshot here on screen, and new device association method coming, which is still to be announced, but from what I'm reading, it means that you no longer need to provide the hardware hash. There's going to be a much simpler way of associating a device to your M365 tenant, which from an administrator's point of view, or someone who deals with Autopilot enrollments, most weeks, it's a very welcome change to stop that process, especially if you're doing sort of a mass rollout. Having a solution to then go find all those hardware IDs and getting them uploaded can be a bit of a pain and time consuming. Last but not least, Windows Sandbox. Now, I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know if this was a feature before I found out about it, but I found some articles that are all dated from May, and I thought this was too interesting not to mention. So if you dabble with code a lot and you do a lot of development and you're running potentially unsafe workloads, you may use a virtual machine or something to do that. Then you'd have to rebuild it, scrap it, build it again, that sort of thing. Windows Sandbox is a feature for you to run and view and potentially untrusted content. It works on virtual technology, and the setup guides, you have to make sure Hyper-V is enabled and that sort of stuff, but it allows you to run a separate virtual sandbox on your machine. Much lower spec, much less administrative effort, so I thought it'd be really useful to call out for any of the guys and girls out there that are doing administrative work and doing testing and development of apps and that kind of thing. So feel free to check it out. The link and stuff is in the article. And last but not least, as always, if there's any questions that you want to ask us, then feel free to reach out, drop us a call, drop us a message, follow us on LinkedIn, drop me a message on LinkedIn. We're always happy to talk tech and help any questions out there. Cheers, thanks.